We're so glad to have Emon Shakoor with us here today. Emon is the CEO and founder of Blossom Accelerator. It's also the first tech-inclusive accelerator program in Saudi Arabia. She has an extremely long list of very impressive achievements, including being on the World Economic Forum as a 30 under 30. And she's been on the cover of magazines, and we're so flattered and honored to have her here with us today.
I'm so honored. Thank you so much for your time, and really happy to be discussing more with you today.
Thank you for being here. So, as you know, I did a lot of research on you. I was stalking you in 360.
You did. We went over a few of the questions, before filming, and I was quite impressed, I have to say. I think you, at this point, know a little bit more about me than I do about myself.
Probably. Yeah, so as I was listening to one of your podcasts, you mentioned that you want to write a book called Saudi Superwoman, From Seizures to Superpowers.
Yes.
And as I was listening to it, I was like, I'm so glad I did not pick that name because she was so angry with me and we had to fight. But I wanted to ask you, what is this book about and why did you want to write it? Yeah.
So the book is really in its inception. I've barely really started even to write it, but it was inspired really by my upbringing ever since I could remember, and I'm really open about it. I've had epilepsy all my life. I still have epilepsy today, and for most of my life, for nearly 20 years, I've battled close to 50 seizures every single day, day in, day out. It really molded my experience navigating the world, my personality, who I am, my ambitions. And for those who don't know, epilepsy is a neurological condition or disorder in which a person has seizures, and a seizure is when the electrical functions of the brain go haywired, and during those moments you lose consciousness. So you also lose your senses, and it really depends on the seizure. Sometimes you'll lose your motor skills, but you lose typically your speech, your eyesight, your hearing, your sense of taste, touch, really everything. And in those moments you're completely unconscious. And so having that and growing up with that all my life, through school, through job interviews, through sports, through navigating life, and molding my personality, I thought that I could one day write a book, kind of, putting together all those experiences. And I have a TEDx talk talking about that, and that was really well received. And really just wanted to break the stereotype. I think the word epilepsy or seizures sometimes to some people might come off scary. I think to a lot of people the word disability is a dirty word. It's a word that I am so with utmost pride I speak about. I'm very proud to be an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist with a disability. And so from seizures to superpowers is exactly what it sounds like. To me, a lot of people, growing up, poor thing, she has seizures. I always thought it was my biggest asset and weapon. And until today, it's molded me. Even if I don't have seizures every day, because it's controlled by medication, I still think it gave me that tenacity. And so I really believe that my seizures are my most ultimate superpowers.
Yeah, you mentioned as a kid you really did believe it was a superpower, right?
I did.
Because you can stop time.
Yes, yes.
And I think you mentioned that you found your purpose quite early on in life, because you always knew that one day you'd be able to help people and talk about these issues very openly.
Yeah, it was difficult because, first of all, as a child, I had a big imagination, and I've always been very playful. So as a child, when I had those experiences, I just thought maybe I'm like That's So Raven, or like one of the Charmed sisters. I had visions from beyond. That's what I thought it was as a child. And I thought that, these are my superpowers. These are moments in time that I'm sure no one else experiences. I know these are unique to me. And even as a child, when I had it, in the beginning, I'd only have like 1 or 2 a year. And so even my family didn't realize that, I was having these experiences, because they were short periods of time. They were short lapses. You're talking about a minute or two of unconsciousness, of a seizure throughout the year. So no one would really notice it. But I would notice it because I was unconscious during those times. So as a child, I was like, what is that feeling? Oh my God, this must be, a superpower. In the movies, it starts off small and then with time it grows. And in fact, indeed, my seizures did grow. The disability grew with time. But as so, it gave me so much strength. So, and I think, I think a lot of children have a lot of wisdom. And I think that wisdom came as a child to my big imagination, but it did really play out through life.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, because I think for a lot of people, it's quite hard to find purpose in life. And even when I was younger, I did have a vision, and people would ask me, what do you want to do? And I would say something like, something for women, something for children. I don't know.
Yeah.
And people look at me like, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
But for you, like you really did find it very early, right? Do you have any tips for people to find?
That's a really great question. I mean, looking back, and my mom knows this very well about me, my dad, my parents, my family. I used to, as a child, like, I remember maybe even probably 5, 6, 7 years old, I used to go to the bathroom and I used to look in the mirror, or in front of my closet, I used to look in the mirror, and I used to practice for interviews. And I just thought, like, something in me always just thought that I would be doing something of importance, that I would be sharing my story one day. And navigating, elementary school and middle school was really tough. Obviously, you're that girl that has all the seizures. No one really understands what it is, your classmates, your teachers, and so forth, the society at large. So, there was quite a bit of bullying that went along. And I think to justify to myself as well, I said, I have this for a reason. Like, it has to be that I was, chosen to have this for some greater reason. I have a greater responsibility that comes with it. And channeling it in a positive manner also helped me find purpose in it. And in terms of finding my purpose, like you stated, it's not like I was born out of the womb knowing, or that I knew exactly that I was going to start MENA's first Tech Inclusion Accelerator. It wasn't so much that. But I also was really grateful to have parents that allowed me to explore. So growing up, I had every hobby underneath the sun. I sang, I danced, I acted, I wrote poetry, I painted. They just gave me all myriad number of activities and hobbies that I could indulge in and kind of find myself through that. So in terms of purpose, it's not like I knew I was going to build something of importance, and create impact in the world. I didn't know in what capacity exactly, but the seizures almost validated it. It was like, well, obviously, like, this is just, it's literally clear to me that, because this is going to be something one day. I don't know why that was so crystal clear to me as a child,
like
even before. Yeah, like this gut feeling. And I think I have to say my family never dodged it. They never were like, oh, why are you such a confident kid? No, they loved it. They were like, oh, good, lean into that. It's good that you feel that way. And I think sometimes schools and the very traditional educational systems sometimes try to dim light. Absolutely. And I think naturally children are so full of light. I love when I go to a playground, even now, as a full woman, 29-year-old woman. I love when I hear kids play, because I think that's the beginning, of their creativity, of their imagination, of their zest for life, and then that later on takes on purpose and whatnot.
I'm very curious what type of interviews you used to practice for. Because you're
Oprah.
CEO now. Like,
I used to practice for Oprah. No, I'm not even joking.
Okay.
I used to, and then later, when Ellen DeGeneres, I used to watch her. I used to practice for Ellen. I used to practice all kinds of things, and I remember I used to practice telling people why I have seizures and why I think it's important, and it all made sense looking back. I think Steve Jobs has the best graduation speech at Stanford. I think, what was it? It was like 2005. And he said that life makes sense looking backwards, like the steps, looking back, it all comes into play. And I feel that very much so about my own life. But as a kid, my parents would see and they'd be like, I love that. Like, look, my child has that vision from beyond. She already knows. So I think it's important that parents don't knock it, and that siblings don't tease too much about it. And I have a very supportive brother as well. And just because a lot of times really kids know, and everyone knows on some level in their consciousness, I swear everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and who they really are fundamentally, but it's clouded by dogma and other people's opinions and fears projected onto us. But really, as children and our truest version of ourselves, we really already know.
Yeah, but I think you also mentioned sometimes getting told no fuels you, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been told no quite a lot. And even I grew up in a Dutch environment. They're supposed to be very gender equal. But I've had mentors in high school telling me that, oh, girls shouldn't be good at science, right? There is still some kind of stereotype.
Right.
And so what happens when someone tells you no? Like, how do you feel?
So I'm known famously, when people tell me no, I just say no to their no. I just basically do not take no for an answer, especially if it's something that I know I want to do and I'm persistent and I have this and I wouldn't want to do this for no good reason. So I have this vision and this zest to do something for a reason, because I'm capable of doing it, because I have the skill set that back it up. Where I lack skill set, I'll build a team, but I know what I want to do. And so if someone currently, for the time being, is saying no, I'm either talking to the wrong person, I need to knock a different door, I can be strategic and seek out a different trajectory to get there, but it's going to happen. And I say this all the time in Arabic. I've always said this, even when I started off really early, as a 23, 24-year-old. I used to tell people, "Bain banak al-waqt," which means, in Arabic, it means between me and you is time. So it's happening, and I'm going to be here for the long haul. So you just sit down and get comfortable with that. Because if it's a no today, it's going to be a yes tomorrow.
You're like, I'm not going anywhere.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is like for selfish reasons, because I think one of the main feedback that I get from my manager is, see, you need to be more confident, you need to be more assertive, speak louder, don't be afraid of not being liked. And I find it very difficult to do that.
Right.
I think growing up, like, I'm supposed to be a good kid, I'm supposed to listen to what people tell me to do, and then this feels like I'm going against everything that's been told. So do you have any advice for us? Like, how do you become more confident?
Wow, okay, well, big. Thank you for that question. Big question. So I'm gonna try to break it down. So first off, let's start. I don't feel confident every single day of my life. And I think confidence is something you build up. And I think it's also just much easier for me to navigate the world being myself than through the lens of however someone else wants me to be. And that, me being comfortable, gives me the confidence to achieve and do the things that I'm meant to do. And also, I also say my seizures are my ultimate superpower, because growing up, so everyone growing up has their own set of challenges, right? You grow up, you might have acne, you might be in that awkward, that awkward phase where there's pictures of us as kids, and we're just like, we just want to eliminate that whole part of our childhood, braces and whatnot. So in addition to that, I mean, growing up with seizures, it was not easy. It was far from, right? I had to be a better public speaker. I had to be wittier. My comebacks in school, I had felt like I had to prove myself. If I felt normally 10x, it would then went up 100x, because I always felt like there was a target on my back. And I always felt like people thought, oh, poor her. And I really despised that narrative, because I felt like, no, she's empowered. Why are you painting that picture about me? And I think because there were more barriers for me to overcome, that distilled in me more confidence and more assertiveness, in just learning very early on that life is too short for me to people please, and life is too short for me to not be really focused on who I am, what I enjoy, what potential gifts do I have, how can I bring that into the world, how can I cultivate something with that. And I just generally look at the glass half full. I'm generally a very optimistic, positive person. Anyone who works with me will tell you when I'm stressed, I laugh a lot. I'm pretty full of life. Everyone has their moments, of course. Let's for clarity, everyone has their moments, including me. But that combination together is what gives me confidence. And where there are days where I feel weaker and not at my best, I allow myself some space and time, not too much, to dwell. But then I fix myself up. I look in the mirror. I say, I can, I'm able, it is possible, it can be done. And I remind myself, I have this vision in place for a reason. And that, as a practice comes together, and that really helps me too.
Yeah. So through Blossoms, you've helped, I think you've mentored thousands of companies, helped them raise millions in funding, right? And many of these startups, or all of them, have a female startup founder on their team. And I was wondering, is there a strength to some of the stereotypical weaknesses of female leadership?
Yeah.
I know I'm not confident, but at least I'm perfectionist and I have very high standards.
I think there are different leadership styles between men and women, and I don't think that's a bad thing. So for me, I often make decisions, even in business. I'm very pragmatic, I'm very logical. My team, everyone I work with will tell you that. However, with certain things, I do follow my gut. You know, the female intuition, like they say, and I take full pride in that. And if there's something in my gut, even though I can't, it mathematically doesn't make sense. Like 1 + 1 does not equal 2. But all I can tell you is it doesn't feel like a 2. Then I'll go with that. Which traditionally someone would be like, well, that just doesn't make sense. There's no pure logic. I'm not going to take it. I'm very empathetic at work. It's really important to me that people feel seen and heard and valued. I do bring emotions into the workplace because today values have progressed. Today, when we speak about work, we talk about purpose, like you asked me. We talk about feeling valued. We talk about, is this what I'm meant to be doing? And those traditional things were usually associated only with family. Today, there's a mix, an extension of our culture where people at work want to feel, important. And so for me, it's super important that I bring emotion and empathy to my organization and the people I work with, because we are highly sensitive. We're as mammals, we have a prefrontal cortex. We've evolved, and I think those are more female characteristics. The caregiver. They always call the female the COO of the household, the chief operating officer, which I'm more than proud to be. And I think in general, men are more penetrative, women are more collaborative, men are more firm. I think you can be just as firm with things in life, and sometimes even that's part of negotiation. And part of negotiation is really meeting someone, in the middle. And I think I'm good at doing that. And so for me, I don't try to be a man at work. I am a woman at work, and I proudly come with those characteristics. And for some women, they might, have some of the male characteristics, and that's perfectly okay. But for me personally, I tap into what I like to call my divine feminine energy at work. That's not being in any way, let's say, too feminine, or whatever that stereotype is for a lot of people when I say feminine energy at work. That's not coming to work with red nail polish and red lipstick on. That's saying that there are things, characteristics that come with women, just as there are characteristics that come with men, and I'm not shy away from that. I don't feel like I need to be successful at work. I don't need to be a man at work. And I think there's something beautiful and liberating and powerful about that too.
Absolutely. There's so many questions I want to ask you. So you mentioned that you cannot be what you cannot see, right? And what you did was the first thing that's ever been created. There has never been an accelerated program that's tech inclusive and focused on females. So when you first pitched this idea to other people, how did they respond?
Oh, great question. Well, also at the time when I started, Munshaat, the small and medium enterprise started in Saudi, was still in its very early stages, just barely in its inception. And there were barely really any accelerators. No one even knew what that was. And the word in Arabic, musarrat amal, like no one, an entrepreneur, and people knew businessmen and businesswomen, but entrepreneur, what is that? Tech startup, what is that? Highly scalable, funding rounds, venture capital. And so in and of itself, it was hard to explain what I'm trying to do. And it's still considered a pretty novel industry. I think globally, it's about 13 to 14 years old globally, which is, it's a pretty, niche area to bringing innovation to corporates, to startups, to venture capital. Early on, there were plenty of people who doubted it. They were just like, oh my God, you're such an ambitious, smart, motivated young girl. But why don't you just get a job somewhere first, And I said, I've worked in clinical drug trials. I've worked for the fastest growing tech startup in MENA, Kareem. I've already started 2 of my other companies. This is what I want to do. And there was naturally a lot of, there was pushback. There were supporters as well, people that have supported me since day one that, I'm forever grateful to. But there was also pushback. But if I was going to sit there and listen to the pushback, I wouldn't be where I am. So at the time it was frustrating. But then again, I knew that I was undertaking a task that was near impossible. I was just turned 24. Solo female founder, young. That comes, being young has a lot of its upside, but then it also has whatever stereotype comes with it. Inexperienced, will she know how, etc., etc., etc. So I knew what I was going against. I knew I was going against the grain, and I was ready to climb uphill, and I'm still ready to climb Everest metaphorically in life any day of the week, because I'm here for the long haul. And I think over the years, the work has spoken for itself. But yes, in short, yes, there was resistance.
Yeah. But so if you cannot be what you cannot see, and there's no older version of Iman out there, how did you become who you are today?
I have the best parents. I have the best brother. I also surround myself with people that I think are way smarter than me, so I continuously learn from them. And in its entirety, being an entrepreneur, there's no rule book. I don't care even if you got an MBA from Stanford or Harvard. There is no way to teach you the emotional agility you have to have when you have to fire someone for the first time, or when you're in charge of everything. Like in the very beginning, you're in charge of everything. You're logistics, operational manager, you're the T girl, you're the HR, you're the accounting, you're the finance, you're the visionary, you're the strategist, you're the marketeer, you're the graphic designer. I mean, you're really everything. They're really everything. Yeah. You're your own wellness coach. You're your own publicist. And I don't think there's any training that will ever prepare you to undergo that task. So being an entrepreneur by nature, you kind of have to be a little crazy to do it. I will start off by admitting anyone who's an entrepreneur who wants to be a businessman or a businesswoman and do that full time, your full money, every money that's going to the company, you don't only have to pay yourself, all the bills that come out with the company, your employees, etc. Undergoing that in itself. So, but the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Eleanor Roosevelt said that, and I believe in that. So I took inspiration from my mentors, and I took the confidence that my family gave me. And when I would sit in silence or in awesome music and I would visualize, I always saw a certain dream or vision, and I leaned into that. And that's where I allowed my inspiration to meet the thing that I really wanted to do. And yeah, there are times where I feel, oh my God, can I do it? Oh my God, am I crazy? I'm starting a startup to help startup. Like, really, that's what I do. Yes. If I had to explain it simply in the earlier days to people. But then, what did doubt ever do for any of us? And I get it. Fear is part of how we evolved. It's to protect ourselves. But I also think we've moved past the survival of the fittest, and we've moved into the survival of the most creative and tenacious. And I can tell you it was the best decision I've ever made, to kind of just be crazy and do it anyway.
Yeah, take the jump.
Yeah, take the jump, take the leap.
So through your accelerator program, you're helping a lot of female startup founders realize their dreams, basically, right? And I'm wondering if you can share one of the stories with us.
I mean, so many. So if I were to name just one, it's like you asking me to pick my favorite child. It's difficult, but I will say, because if I said one, then on the interview later, they'll be like, you didn't mention me. But what I will say is one of my favorite things, and part of my job, is to meet incredible people that have a zest for life, that have a vision, they want to execute, and I can see when someone is fearful but visionary, and helping them, giving them the tools and network and knowledge and resources and access to funding and access to private sector and corporate and government to really take it to the next level. Because I think a lot of people have vision. They really just need someone to help a little bit structure it, put them in the right places, talking to the right people, and structure the pitch right, and obviously help them with the execution. But from there on, really, the opportunities are limitless. But if I said it, then we have a current accelerator going on.
Don't worry, I won't.
Then my past alumni companies, but I'm a huge fan of biotech. I'll say that, the biotech industry. I think it's underserved. I think a lot of deep tech in this region is underserved, and so I'm really excited about certain opportunities that are coming out of those sectors.
Yeah, you studied neuroscience and you were a researcher, right? So it merges all your passions together.
It's true. We still have so many more passions to cover, and I think that's something else. I don't feel like I've made it, and I think it's a good thing. I don't think I've made it. If I feel like I've made it, I should not be here today, shouldn't I? I should just be chilling by the pool, or or just still in bed. There's still so many more things I want to do, and I'm figuring out how to do those things. I'm still figuring out, I'm still learning, and you'll never fully feel like you've gotten there. I think even if I had all the money in the world and I was 85, I would still be working. I would still be doing something, because I feel like when you stop, then when you shrivel up and die, I think.
But so is there a milestone that you want to achieve that would make you feel like, now I've made it? Like being on Oprah, maybe.
You know what? I used to think that way.
Yeah.
I used to think that way. Early on, I was like, oh my God, I got this magazine cover. Oh my God, I got this magazine cover. Oh my God, I've been on a billboard. Oh my God, I've been on Burj Khalifa. Oh my God, my face is plastered on airports. I had that more traditional mindset, limiting, I would say, mindset too, about success. And now I just think it's a journey. It's a journey, and I'm, soaking it all in. And I don't want to limit myself by these traditional landmarks that often can be very depressing and can often feel like you've reached it, and then what then? Then you feel like you are falling again, or what's the next thing? So I just operate from a place of, am I growing? Am I learning new skill set? Am I reaching and diving into my fullest potential? Yeah. Am I bringing all I can to the table? And then when I feel like I'm not, then I scale. I think of new ideas. I think, who can we partner with? How can we grow? Maybe we can do, I was talking to my right-hand man, someone in our team that's incredible. And I was telling him, the future is Blossom Holding, not just Blossom Accelerator. And we're actually rebranding. It's just going to be Blossom, because we do a lot more than acceleration. We do venture studios, we do incubation, we do hackathons, we do corporate venture capital, we consult, we put together angel groups. We're currently building one of the biggest co-working spaces in the Neom Tabuk region. And so I was like, help me, and we'll build Blossom Holding, and we'll do many more things to come. So I don't feel like I've made it, but and I think it's important to anyone who's watching, no one, and if they think that they have, then they really haven't. And they still have much more to learn and grow then.
I think it's very encouraging to know that even if you've been on the cover of a magazine, you still feel like that. So there's, it's comforting to know that even people that you admire extremely, they're also just humans. They also go through depressions and whatever. And
absolutely.
But, so you are a fan of manifestation,
yes,
right?
I am.
I'm just very curious about what you're trying to manifest now. Is it Blossom Holding, or?
In its truest form, when I manifest, I see myself happy and in my most glorified sense. It's not just like this one-off Blossom Holding. I actually think my newest ambition is I'm going to have it all. And because I've always heard the story that women can't have it all, or that you'd have to pick between having your own family that's prospering, where you're being a good wife and a good mother, or you're going to be that soon to be a billionaire on the cover of Forbes, building that whatever company. And I am a believer that, no, I think I can have it all with the right balance and partners and people that I invite into my life. You can build that. You choose. That's the exciting thing about building a company. You choose who you want to work with. When you marry, you choose who your partner is. Even in Islam, you don't have to say yes if you don't want to. You choose, yes, I want to move forward. No, I do not want to move forward. And it's Blossom Holding is part of it, but I think the bigger vision is that I'm fulfilled and that I'm doing all that I can in this brief thing we called life, between space and time. I hope to live to 110. I want to work on longevity. Maybe that can be one of my goals. Not only age gracefully, but like feel good. And so it's this holistic picture, if you may. And having well-being. I work really hard, but I'm not going to work to the point where I burn out, because then it's a disservice to myself. Then I can't really continue. Then it's not sustainable. So the bigger manifestation is keep building, keep growing, enjoy it, be happy while you're doing it, relish in the moment, work with people that you love, that make you smile, that you admire, that you respect, that teach you, that fill in your blind spots. I can't do it all. I don't do it all. And I know what I'm good at, and I know where my weaknesses are, and I pull from other people where I lack.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I also would like to have it all, but I think sometimes I'm also scared. What if I'm setting the standards too high?
Yeah.
Or what if I'm creating too much pressure for myself in that sense? Because I think at least what my mom tells me is in the Chinese culture, if you are too successful as a woman, if you have a PhD, you went to Harvard, and you can only pick someone that's above you, right? You don't marry down.
Yeah.
So the pool gets smaller and smaller as you get more successful.
Yeah.
Do you think you can find someone who would be okay with us being like this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, not like, did I hesitate? No, because the number one rule they teach you in marketing is you don't market to everyone. And I have everyone, like for me personally, I don't think this is news. There's only a specific target demographic and I'm happy. I don't need every single person to want me. I don't think there's any value in that. Not everyone is going to want to be your client in the company. Not everyone's going to want to be your friend, right? And it's okay. And I might not suit everyone, and that's okay too, you know? So, you just really need one. That's it. You really, I'm not trying to be with 10, one person to marry, right? Yeah. And no, I think for sure I will, 1,000%. And I think, these things are also in, the hands of God, when you get married, how you get married, all these things. But I don't lead life in fear of, oh, I'm too powerful, or, or it might intimidate them, or they only want someone who's going to be a good wife and a good mom. I think, if anything, they would say, wow, she is incredible at multitasking, and look what she's built. She would be incredible making a house a home. Why wouldn't she? She's the epitome of COO, operationally in the house or outside of it. But of course, to each their own. Again, we said we're not marketing to everyone. So, but I don't think women should. And there was this great talk Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, gave, where she said a lot of women, and I used to feel this way, but like years ago, not anymore, where at a young age I was already thinking like, oh, what if when I do this, would it line up with whoever in the future wants to marry me? If I do that, would this be, attractive, appealing, etc.? But I no longer operate from that, what I call limiting mindset. I live authentically who I am, and I believe that as long as I live authentically who I am, and I shine with whatever energy I am, that's what I will attract. I think that's true. And if I live in this, oh, I'm fearful, then I might, at that point, attract someone who is actually intimidated by. But I don't really, and I think we've evolved. And the young population of Saudi, we're so full of energy. I think there's plenty of people who don't think that way anymore. I'm confident of that, at least. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You say that you don't feel like you've made it, but there must be something that you're extremely proud of, right?
Yes.
What is the one thing that you're most proud of?
The one thing that I'm most proud of, I think I'm proud of the team I have. I think, they're really the backbone. You can't run a company by yourself, and I've been so blessed to attract the most talented and ambitious and relentless people that make my job exciting and easier to do every day, and hold my hand when I feel down, when I'm sick. In this interview you might hear a cough. I'm just coming off a flu. And to them I'm forever grateful, because they're so talented. They could do anything else in the world, but they believe in me and in the mission of the company, and they make the work we do possible, serving all our different clientele, working with big corporates and banks and government. And to them and their belief, I'm forever grateful, and I'll always give back. I'm like, always, and they know that. But I think that's what I'm most proud of, because I think really building a team is difficult. It's not easy. It's not a task for those that fear.
Yeah. But I can see that about you, that because you're so fearless, that those people form around you. They want to support you. They believe in your vision, and
I really do feel lucky. And sometimes I'm having a bad day, and I'm like, so and so happened. What do you think we should do about it? How would you handle this situation? And that's tech inclusive, right? Or just inclusive innovation, not necessarily tech, right? And I'm a big believer in, like I mentioned, not only gender, but also backgrounds, nationalities, bringing people that are, neurodiverse. There's so many talented people that I think are sidelined sometimes because of their nationality, or sometimes they're neurodiverse, right? They might have ADHD or on the spectrum of autism, or have something about them that wouldn't be, and I think even the way interviews are done today, the way we like to do it is, I like to work with someone kind of like a freelancer and see how we mesh, how the energy is. So much of it is energy. I really care about great company culture, and that everyone's happy and everyone wants to work and they feel alive and they feel like this is really serving them. And yeah, so bringing that inclusive aspect into work as well. So I think that's my greatest accomplishment. And I think the moment someone loses track of the power of their team, the company will really start to crumble.
So you've mentioned that 50% of startup founders are female, but globally only 2% receive the VC funding.
Yes.
Why do you think this is? And you've mentioned it's also your goal to close this gap, right?
Absolutely.
What's your plan?
Okay, great. So I think in the MENA region, so female founders are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs, right? There are more women starting businesses today than ever before in history, not only in our region, but globally. I think today we're at 40% female founders starting businesses. And like you mentioned, and I think in the region here, it's lower. It's even like 0.5% of venture capital funding goes to women. Wow. There are many reasons, right? At the end of the day, you befriend, work with, and sometimes even invest people who look like you, who are familiar. There's that sense of familiarity. And even if you look, at biases, and you look at why we have biases, which is when our brains automatically make an assumption about someone. I sit with you, I don't know you, you have not said a word, my brain has already drawn some conclusions about you. This has happened evolutionarily, so we protect ourselves. Because back in the day, if you were walking alone, that other village or the community, you don't know them, you're trying to protect yourself from them, so you have to draw a quick conclusion about them to safeguard yourself. And today in business, along with all aspects of life, we do that. We have biases. Where the strength is today is to look beyond the bias, to recognize you have the bias, which is very difficult to do, very difficult to do. But I think often in VC is still a male-dominated, game. It's a boys' club still. I can count to you on my fingers how many women we have in VC in the MENA ecosystem. And this is not unique to MENA. This is a global phenomenon. In Silicon Valley, the place that has Apple and Tesla and gave birth to Uber and Snapchat and every major tech company you can think of underneath the sun, their gap is still 98% of venture capital funding goes to men. So clearly this is a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But I will say is because most of the people in power are men, right? They happen to, one, come across more male companies because that's who the founding team partners are. And two, their biases come into play, and there needs to be more education about biases. People need to be open about learning it and unlearning certain things. I have to unlearn things all the time. I made it a mission. We at some point had an all-female team. And then at some point I was like, no, I'm doing something wrong. I'm using my own bias. And it makes sense because I hired more women at the time because that's what I was mostly surrounded by, and you usually will attract more of what you are. So you have to learn and, exert more effort to bring in that diversity. So part of the reason of why less women raise venture capital funding is the biases. There's many statistics about how women are negotiated harder than men. So if there's generally speaking, right? If there's a woman out there raising, let's say $1 million versus a man, there are more probing questions asked to the female around risk, around, losses, whereas men are asked more, positively promoted questions, biases. There's obviously the famous bias. What's she going to do? Is she going to be a pregnant female founder? Is she going to raise pregnant? Is she going to, is she going to be breastfeeding her newborn children and raising a family? Or is she going to be raising money and growing a company? There's that. And I think that's an unspoken one that people don't talk enough about. And there's nothing legally happening in MENA that prevents a woman. I think it's important to note to mention. There's nothing legally that bounds a woman from being successful. We're talking about micro level, biases, neurological level things that are happening that prevent sometimes the VC, the venture capitalist, and the female entrepreneur that feels she's in her limiting belief, she's not as confident, she's self-aware of when she walks into a room, she's almost the only girl in the room, or one of very few, especially if she's young. That's a lot more burden to carry. You're already building a company, it's already hard as it is, you already quit your job to do it full time, you're financing yourself, and now you're, so there's a lot of at play as to why this gender gap exists. I'm adamant on closing it. I will say it is getting a lot better. And I'm also all about sharing authentic stories and saying it's okay as the female founder, one, being sometimes in difficult situations. It's all about the comeback and going back again. That's why I say no to other people's no's, because some people are sometimes wrong. And it's okay. And I've even made some bad first, let's say, judgments or assessments, but as long as that person's open to reevaluating. And then from the female founder, I always advise a lot of women, build a tech company. Build something scalable. You love fashion, great. I'm not. So anything I'm about to say, these are traditional sectors women are in. Women are in e-commerce, in marketplaces, in ed tech, in fashion, etc., in health. And those are great. However, especially with the fashion and e-commerce and marketplaces and food, I encourage those women to take fashion, make it fashion tech, make food tech. It's super important that you're building a business that's larger than you, that doesn't revolve around you. Build a tech company, build something that's scalable so it is investor backable. Not every company can be backed by venture capitalists, because VC is the riskiest asset, of private equity of all, I just want to say that again, because VC is the riskiest asset class, of investing, and it's not equipped for all kinds of companies. So I advise women to start a tech company, right? Take whatever your interests are, but funnel it into something scalable. And two, it is hard to be confident every day, and it is hard to break away from your limiting belief, and it is hard to break away from your imposter syndrome, but you have to do it. You have to do it to stay true to the dream that you want to build. And I say that to female founders, I say that to entrepreneurs of different nationalities that are trying to find their footing in the Saudi ecosystem. I say it to neurodiverse entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs with a disability, and that use that to your asset. Because I'll tell you what, you'll remember the female founder better. In the land of more, right, you actually stand out more. Use whatever you can to your advantage. You can find many things and to complain about every day, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, it does. But I also, to move past it, we have to find a solution in ourselves, finding our own strength, while also educating the ecosystem of more ways they can support.
Yeah, use it as your strength.
Yeah.
But I imagine you must have entered a lot of rooms with very powerful older men.
Yeah.
Do you ever get intimidated?
Yes, for sure. Especially earlier on, and now I just roll with it. Now, I feel like it's just as much as my playground as it is theirs. And there's a reason that I was invited to be part of that room. And so I'm not going to sit there and create some little petty party about myself. I am deserving to be in that room. I cultivated that myself. No one invited me to be there. I created a company from scratch 6 years ago, and my awards and accolades and traction has gotten me invited there. So I'm going to stand tall there in my heels. I'm going to stand very tall there because I'm pretty tiny in person. Yeah, sometimes it's, when I want to segue into networking with someone thrice my age, not just twice my age, but thrice my age, that can be intimidating. But I just lean into just being myself. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be enough. And also, every person that might not directly relate to me has an advisor, a clientele, a team, someone that works with them that does. And I take comfort in that. So far, so good, by the way, thank God. I mean, there's been lots of challenges, but 6 years later, being in business and doing really well and scaling really quickly. So I say it from a place, because I know how intimidating it can be, but I want a lot of people to move out of there and not feel trapped in that zone, because a lot of the barriers are mental as well.
Yeah, I think very often we just assume other people know better, they're more experienced.
Right.
But it's not really true, I think.
So we're both part of the Global Shapers community,
yes,
which was founded in 2011. out of the Arab Spring because they noticed that some of the most pressing game changers of the ecosystem were people under the age of 30. And so there is a lot of research by the World Economic Forum and many other consulting groups that show that young people have so much to add to the table. We are the generation that have been, handed the most catastrophic things in the world, like climate change and just everything that's going on in the world today. And we're one of the last generations that can really help change it. So there's a wealth of knowledge young people have. And I still think young people are underestimated, but that's why we're both part of the Global Shapers community, which is communities that can uplift and really empower young people, or like the MISC Foundation here in Saudi. And our leadership in Saudi obviously is younger, and we're 70% of our population is under the age of 35. And I think when people start hearing the statistics and listening to the research, I'm a woman of science, I'm always listening to the research, that's when, and we have podcasts like this, so thank you so much again for hosting this.
You have your own podcast too, yeah.
I do,
yes.
But thank you again, really, because these are the conversations that people are going to be listening to, and it's going to help them open up their minds or think something that they weren't thinking of just yesterday, and, take maybe a different path.
Yeah. Can I ask you a bit of a controversial question?
Ooh.
No, so I know some people that are watching this, they might think, okay, Iman was invited to the World Economic Forum because she's a Saudi female, right?
Mm-hmm.
She has all these accomplishments, mostly to fit into that box.
Mm-hmm.
Or what would you say to those people?
Well, there are many Saudi women, and I don't think every year hundreds of them are being invited to speak at the World Economic Forum. So there's one. Yes. Two, I do not like fitting into boxes. I don't know if you've noticed, or anyone who's met me noticed, the box that I fit into is the box that fits me, the one that is just labeled Iman with an O too, like, right? The way I navigate my life is uniquely to me. With that being said, I'm very privileged to be born into a G20 country, a country with high GDP, with resources, with access to opportunity, education. The King Abdullah scholarships have given many opportunities for Saudis, both men and female, to study abroad, to garnish from cross-cultural experiences. And to those things that I was born into, I'm forever grateful. And those are the privileges that I'm aware of, that I know. I wasn't born into another country. I was born into this country, Saudi Arabia. And that comes with its own, financial assets. But with that being said, being born into that, I'm never going to take that for granted. And I'm always going to push the needle. And I'm always going to put my mind to certain things that I believe in. And I hope, it would be a great disservice to me if someone picks me because I'm young, female, tech, whatever. I don't want to hire someone because they're a woman. I don't want to hire someone because they have a disability or whatever. That's not a great strategy. Not great for the person, for their growth, not great for the organization, not great for the government. So if someone has, for the sake of the argument, picked me to put into that box, I don't think it would have served me, and I don't think I aspire to fit into anyone's checklist. And if anything, I try to actually push the boundaries and create my own. And otherwise, I really would have just gotten a job 6 years ago. So that would be my answer to that.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned is also getting really good support from your parents.
Yes.
And my mom has been super supportive, but I didn't have a very good relationship with my dad. So I think in some sense I did lack good role models. And I think for Saudi in this moment in time, for many young women, it would be the first thing, the first dance studio, first accelerator program. Do you think what do you think is the best way to put more role models such as yourself out there and help young women believe they can do whatever it is they want to do?
I love that question. Well, you kind of highlighted it before. You can't be what you can't see, or it's really hard. It's really hard to be what you can't see. So sharing more stories, right? If there are no female venture capitalists or no athletes that are disabled. It's hard for you to imagine yourself as a disabled person to be running, a marathon, right? So I think really the visibility of having more people in power that have achieved that, that's a great first step. I think everyone has their own individual responsibility to give back as well. I love mentoring. I love seeing, young women that come to me and they're like, how did you do this? What did you do to become a global shaper, or go to World Economic Forum, or have a TEDx talk, or be in a cover magazine? And if you watch any of my interviews or know me in person, I'm very open, because I think talent is equally distributed, but often opportunity is not. And if I can be a gateway in helping many other men and women reach their dreams and live a more prosperous life, I believe in abundance, then I'm definitely going to do that. So I think everyone has that own individual responsibility to give back, and it feels good to give back. And it really does. It feels good. I feel better about my day. And I believe in, the good juju or the good karma, or, and so in terms of how we can help foster and create more women, the country is also doing incredible efforts as part of 2030 vision. I think this is really the generation of women. Sometimes the men, I think, they've told me they feel left behind. But there are incredible efforts happening in Saudi, and that's, happening, trickling top down. And from a bottom up approach, I think it's important that we reiterate to young people, men and women, that you can be whoever you want to be, and you can do whatever you want to do. And the only person that holds you back, at least let's talk legally, is you. And believing that and understanding that is actually really liberating and powerful. And then that's it. The world is yours.
Oh, that is such a good note. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that you love helping other people and you believe in abundance. But I think there's also this stereotype that you have to compete within your own cohorts.
Right.
Or if there's only one position for a board member for a female,
right,
then you have to go for it.
Right.
And sometimes maybe it's a zero-sum game and you can't help the other person.
Right.
Do you think this is completely wrong, or?
I understand why people, so I get this all the time. Oh, Iman, you want to support other women and this whole inclusivity thing. You know what? Women are, jealous of each other and want to pull each other's hair out and fight over the same position. And to that I answer, that's not a problem amongst women. That's a societal problem, right? So instead of us saying, I have an advisory board of 5, all of them will be men, I'm going to pull up one seat for a woman. That's token girl. That's then we're talking about token girl. So instead of me saying, oh, look there, I've pulled up a seat for you, say thank you, I say let's change the whole table. I say let's change the whole system, because that's not beneficial. So also don't create environments that are going to be creating unhealthy competition. I'm all about competition. I'm an entrepreneur. You can ask my team any day of the week. I'm extremely competitive. However, there's healthy and there's unhealthy competition. So when it comes to what you refer to as the glass ceiling, right? This feeling of the higher you go up, the less women you see, and therefore the higher I grow up, it's either me or you. If we want that opportunity, whatever it is, whatever that seat at the table, it's between me and you. The only way we can really solve that, it's not on an individual level. It's not just, hey, Iman. Yes, it's also, hey, Iman, be more open and graceful and pass that opportunity on, which I do. But it's also top-down effects within organizations. And for them to re-look at the way they hire and who they have in positions of power, who are their partners, who are their CEOs, who are their executives, who are their investors, who are their board members. And that's also a global phenomenon. If you look at Fortune 500 companies today, or S&P 500 companies today, there are almost no women on boards. There are no women on boards. There's almost no women female CEOs. Yep. There are many reports that come out from organizations like BCG and Bain and WEF, but there's still this huge gap. And I think that's something leaderships are working towards. And if they ever want my consultation on it, I'm happy to give them my insight. But then I still believe in abundance. So I also believe even if there is another person with a same degree, similar background, very similar, let's say 2 resumes, I still then lean into my authentic personality. And there are no exactly two people in the same everything. And so that's why I think it's also important that women and men find confidence in who they are. So if I am being interviewed for an opportunity, or to represent something, I'm going to come to that interview 100% myself, because that's the best that I can be. I cannot emulate whoever else. I can only be the best of this version, and it also just makes my life so much easier to live, just being me, obviously. But I think there are structural changes that need to happen so women don't feel like, oh, if I need to fight over this, because there are many, many men that are CEOs, and there should be just as many female CEOs, and they should also then be supported, because then you say, oh, well, how's she going to probably have time for a family? Like I said, I want to have it all. I will have it all. And how you find time to also have a family is the same way our values are changing around work, and work brings us peace and validation and comfort and purpose. Work then should also subsidize for parental leave, not just maternal leave, right? And many, many other things. So, I hope that answers the question.
We're going to raise funding and raise babies.
There you go. Yes. I think that's beautiful. I think that's powerful. And it's totally okay if, by the way, she doesn't want to raise funding.
Yeah.
If she wants to be a stay-at-home.
Or raise babies.
Right. No, because I think a lot of women are also antagonized or criticized, like, oh, you should be working, why aren't you working? Or you should have kids immediately, why aren't you having kids? And
so too rigid idea of what feminism is.
And I think it's really up to her. Well, what does she want to do? Maybe we should ask her. And again, it's not really a one size fits all.
What I think is probably one of the scariest thing is being yourself, to be honest, because as I was interviewing for these management consulting companies, the advice that I got is you have a lot of things working against you. You're young, you're Asian, you're female. You kind of have to overcompensate for being associated with weak and submissive. So do you feel like, but you said you think people should be completely themselves.
Yes.
But what if it denies them certain opportunities? Do you think,
I think it's the energy that you bring to it. I think my edge is that I'm young, and so I see the world differently. I'm female, so I see it in a perspective that my male counterparts and competitors don't see. I'm Saudi, so I'm gonna, I'm born into this rich, amazing country, and I understand it, and I speak Arabic fluently, and there's so many things that I can leverage off being Saudi. And so when I walk into a room or an interview, an opportunity, or anything, I think those are my greatest assets. And then where I think I have a blind spot, I lend and lead and learn and let others lead, my coworkers, potential partners, associates. But I don't think it's in and of itself. And I think it's really on the person then speaking to me for them to correct themselves and their projections about the world. If they view that as weakness, I'm not going to become a man. I'm not going to become more masculine in my female body. I was born a woman to adhere, or I'm not going to magically be 60 years old, right? So, so there's only so much I can do. And I also know that I can't please everyone. And at the end of everything I do, there's people that are going to be naysayers and say, oh, I still don't really like her or whatever. But I'm not going to spend any time on that either. Yeah. So I'm completely okay if someone doesn't adore me. That's all right. Because I'm focused on my mission and purpose and delivering the best acceleration programs, venture studios, incubators, hackathons, the highest quality, making sure that the word of mouth from the entrepreneurs that we empower, that we help fundraise, that we help them build companies, that at the end of the day, what are they saying about me? And then let the work kind of just speak for itself.
Yeah.
And then that's how you move past the stereotype. And it takes time. You have to be patient. So maybe at the time people will say no. And then in a few months' time, sometimes years' time, they'll come around and say yes because of the impact you've created. So that's why I always say, بيني وبينك الوقت. Between me and you is just time. I'm here to stay. It's okay. If you're not a believer today, you will be eventually.
Yeah. No, I do. I do believe there are many ways to achieve things, and you don't have to do things in one certain way.
Yeah.
And I think you can be feminine and strong, and yeah.
I think early on I was scared I went very public about me having epilepsy for the first time when I was 24. I was really scared that people were going to be like, oh, she has a disorder or a disease or whatever she has. I don't know, what does she have? And then the minute I was really open, it was so freeing. And so many people contacted me that have epilepsy and have seizures. Oh, my husband, my cousin, my daughter, my son, my brother, my nephew, my niece, my teacher. And I realized that there's this whole community that's kept secret. And I thought to myself, wow, this is just epilepsy. Like, this is nothing compared to what some people have to go through, having autism, having other visual impairments, motor skill impairments. So I think there's also a lot of power in being yourself and being authentic. And do you have to still be very professional? Yes. Do you have to say everything that comes to mind? No. Should you? No. Do I want a work environment where there's absolutely no filter? No. I don't think that's healthy either. So, and sometimes everyone's figuring it out. Every partner, every CEO, every major VC, no one has all the answers, and I know that. And so I take comfort in that, and sometimes I'm figuring it out. I'm living, I'm learning, I'm working, and there's some things I don't know the answer to, and with time, everything comes with time. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I imagine there must be some marketing or PR teams that would advise you to not associate yourselves with bullying, epilepsy, health issues. And my philosophy is always, I want to show people like the raw, vulnerable moments.
Right.
I'm okay with telling people I've cried at work.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you think of the CEO or the leader of a country, most people would think, I don't want that person to cry, right? Because they don't have it together. They're not a leader material.
Right.
But do you think that leaders should be able to be human in front, like publicly?
1000%. I think it's really important to have great wellness. And wellness is not just going to the gym 6 times a week and working to get a six-pack. Wellness is mentally how you feel on the inside. And although you mentioned you've cried at work, there are many men who want to cry on the inside. They're not actually physically tears, but they're frustrated. They come back to work, they're miserable. They're maybe getting, unnecessarily angry. Not like they just come back with a lot of frustration. They come back to work to their children or to their wives, and that's not healthy either. But that's also a leader, right? So the question needs to be framed to: should leaders be human? Yes. And how can we help leaders maintain and live a more sustainable life so they can continue to lead, right? Because that's not great for the man either if he comes home and he feels miserable and frustrated and unaccomplished, and he feels like all of his walls are coming in. They may not say it, but we're all human. There's no way it doesn't happen. I don't care who it is. It can be the president, it can be anyone. I think it's important that we raise the topic of mental health and really being able to communicate and talking things through. I think we live in a world that our grandparents don't live in, with social media, with instant gratification. The values are evolving. Work has literally become life. Work used to end at 5. Work no longer ends at 5. Work continues and will continue to 11 p.m. So how can we find harmony? How can we find work-life balance or flow? How can we build relationships, familial, right? Creating your own family while building that dream job or that company, or prospering and climbing the corporate ladder. I think these are the more conversations that are realistic that we should be having, rather than, oh, you're a leader, you're not allowed to feel, because that's just not going to happen. If we do that, then you're just going to have a stroke at 60. Then let's talk about longevity. And then we're still going to talk about wellness, and we're still going to talk about mental health.
Yeah. Talking about vulnerabilities and bullying, I was bullied quite badly in high school as well. I was the only non-white kid in a Dutch high school. And so I think as a kid, that was your whole world, right? You don't know there's a whole world outside of it. And in your formative years, the pain is, I guess it's harder to recover from that as well. Do you feel like you have recovered, and how do you look back on that period?
That's a great question. I think I would just say it's channeled into sassy.
Mm, I
not,
like it.
not in a bad way. It's channeled into fierce. There's nothing I can do. Try me. I'm going to win this government tender. I'm gonna make sure the startups are happier. With the services that we render. I'm gonna make sure it's channeled into really, just wait and see. Kind of that feeling.
Yeah.
And I think I try. And yeah, does it emanate from pain? Yes. Does it emanate from feeling like other kids made me feel like I wasn't worthy? Yes. Does it emanate from all this really negative, sad stuff and I cried a lot? Yes. But did that later help me journal, write poetry, vision my life, manifest? Also, yes. So I think we can't control all the bad things that happen to us. We can't prevent that from happening. No parent can prevent that happening to their child, right? Everyone's going to go through their own set of obstacles, but we can control how we react to it, and we can control how we move on from there.
Yeah, I think for me, at least, a personal motivator is actually pain, or it's many of my decisions are anchored in pain. Because, so for example, even setting up this episode is, I'm also very often the only female in the room, and I know what it's like to feel lonely or to lack guidance, which is why I'm trying to put these stories and more role models such as yourself out there, so that young women that see this, they know, like, even people that they might be very intimidated by you, by the way, that you are so kind and so human and you want to help others, and they can do whatever they want.
And I just really thank you for your time and for your graciousness, and remember me when this podcast is huge one day. And hopefully we celebrate it together. And I appreciate you also opening up and talking about your bullying and your past experiences, and I hope other people watching this can see that sometimes exclusion, feeling excluded, whatever that means for whoever watching, is that force of nature that you need that's going to take you to that next hallmark of your life. So with that, thank you again, and I can't wait to hopefully be back in a few years and share some updates. And I'll talk a little bit more. Hopefully by then, let's manifest it. I'll have it all.
Yeah, let's manifest it.
Let's manifest it. Right.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.